Let's
Got it.
Hello, welcome to a video that is going to break down and give you the basic and maybe even some intermediate information about the difference between commercial aviation flight attendants and private aviation flight attendants. So I'm Abby Unger, the owner and founder of Flight Attendant Career Connection, and I help aspiring flight attendants reach their goal and land their dream job faster and with less frustration. And I'm joined today by my friend Natalie, who does a similar thing for flight attendants who are looking to move into the private aviation space, either with no experience at all or just skipping commercial completely and just diving right into private, if that is what your skill set, your background, and your desire warrants. So we're going to talk a little bit about the differences. There's a lot of information about commercial aviation out there. That's what we're most familiar with. That's what most of us fly. We don't usually all get to fly private. If you have, why are you here? If you have a jet, why do you want to be the flight attendant on it? But I don't know, maybe he was a bad dude and now you're looking to get back in a jet. Anyways, so
Moving forward.
whatever,
Moving forward.
that's another video. So Natalie's been in aviation for 8 years, and she's now spent half of that time as a commercial flight attendant and half as a private flight attendant, seeing the world in both cases, loving life and helping people, serving people in both cases. But she's really passionate about private aviation, and she is very happy on that side of aviation and is really loving her career. And so she and I actually met last year. It was a little over a year ago. I was invited to Da Vinci Inflight Institute in Southern Florida in Fort Lauderdale to speak at one of their networking events for private flight attendants. They train private flight attendants, and I taught my interview class there. And Natalie and I connected actually at the wine cocktails after the networking event, and just had a really fun time getting to know each other. And that's when I think that maybe when it started planting the seed that maybe she could start helping people get into
Yes.
what she does. And so she now helps aspiring private flight attendants learn what they need to learn. And she just has so many resources. One of the biggest differences about private versus commercial, from my point of view, is the networking aspect of it. Referrals from teammates, other flight attendants, referrals from people who own the jets or who are chartering the jets. It's a community that really relies on reputation, as well as it's kind of a who you know, and not in like a weird way, like, ooh, it's who you know. It's just literally, if they didn't know that you were a flight attendant, then they can't recommend you. It's a little bit more like that. So I'm going to turn it over to Natalie now, and I'm going to ask her a couple questions. If you have questions that we don't cover, we would love for you to drop them in the comments below wherever you're watching this video, because we have a feeling that we will need to do a Q&A, wrap up, clean up of the things that we maybe didn't think about, or that our answers sparked a new question. So we would love that. But first of all, let's talk about, Natalie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, because
Sure.
I have a little bit of knowledge about private aviation, but not from a point of view of having done it. So,
Sure.
until you've done it, you don't really know what it's
It's true.
really like. So,
Mhm.
how did your career in aviation start? Where did you get your start? How did it start?
When I was little, honestly, when I was 4, I told my mom that I was going to be a flight attendant. It was my very
Yes.
first flight. It was my very first flight ever. First time to be on an airplane, going to Disney World. It was in the 80s, and I see the flight attendant at the front of the aircraft with the triangle orange hair, and she's doing her demo. And I didn't know what a demo was at the time. I just knew that she was like this glamorous person. Like, that's what I'm gonna do when I grow up. And I made that a reality when I reached adulthood. And so I can say it really did start when I was younger.
I love that. I think
Yeah.
that that's really going to resonate with a lot of people. Not everyone has that desire from the time they were a little girl, but
True.
it's certainly not uncommon. That
Mhm.
is, and even if they didn't pursue it right into adulthood, like you had the opportunity to, they sometimes are now wrapping back around in the second phase of their life and
Mhm.
visiting what did my heart want when I was a child. And it was, I wanted to travel and help people and do something that seemed really exciting and important too. So what airline, do you mind telling us a little
No,
bit
I
about
don't mind.
this airline? We would love, I
Yes.
know that they would love to hear it when you hear who it is.
I
So
was
who
with
was it?
Delta. I was with
Okay.
Delta Airlines for 4 years. And that I was done. It was one of those things where I felt like I wasn't reaching my full potential. Like it was very much, I was tired of telling people how many times that we have, what snacks we have and what it was just like so repetitive and not personal. And that's where I really thrive in meeting that personal connection with people. So I didn't feel I was being used to my fullest potential. That's the bottom
Okay.
line for me.
I think that's fair. When you were on your journey to get into commercial aviation, you've got a puppy. I'll probably have a kid that runs through at some point. So we're just everyone. This is just you're here with me and Natalie in our houses, having coffee and talking flight attendant. So casual here. So when you were on your journey to become a commercial flight attendant, what was that like for you? Because we see you now. I mean, you were a private corporate flight attendant. You were like super fancy. But what was your journey like to even get in to Delta? Because I'm gonna guess that it was just like, hello, I'm Natalie, I'm amazing, you should hire me, Delta. Was it like that, or
Oh
was
my
it
gosh,
hard?
no, 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 no.
It wasn't.
No,
No.
no. Bear with me if you heard my dogs barking. The Amazon guy came by, so that's real life.
Fair. That's fair.
Okay, so your question was, so repeat your question. Repeat your question for me one
That's
more time.
okay. Just I would love for you to share a little bit about whether or not it was easy or hard for you to break
Oh,
into commercial aviation to
it was
start.
very hard. It was very hard. I spent approximately 2.5 years trying to get into commercial.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it wasn't a, I hear those stories of the people that have the one and done, and I'm like, you know what, kudos to you, you're in alignment with who you're supposed to be, bravo, cheers. But for me it wasn't. Like it wasn't. I spent that 2.5 years applying to several different airlines. I didn't know which airline I wanted. I just knew that I wanted to be in the skies, and it was just a matter of timing, because just the way my life played out at that time, it was meant for me. So
Yeah.
that's the way it
Yeah.
was for me.
And I always, no one's path to success is straight. No one has
Mhm.
just a straight path. Even I was in my first flight attendant interview, got hired by United on the spot, didn't know what I was doing, boom. But then I got fired 3 weeks later. So again, like that was a great success at the beginning, but then I had to pull myself up and
Right.
get back in it, because again, this is really what I wanted to do. And anyone who wants to know the tea, there's a video on it. I'm not going to go into the story here, so check out the YouTubes. All right. So, but good. I mean, everybody has there is a struggle. There is some work. Even things that are easy doesn't mean it's effortless, without effort.
Yes,
And
that's
so
a
that's
great point.
yeah, and that's one of the things that, easy is not really a great word. I don't like to use that word a
Mhm.
ton, because everything takes effort, but that doesn't mean that there can't be some ease to it. And you talked about alignment. And so tell me about your transition from commercial to private or corporate aviation. Was that similar? Were you putting out a bunch of resumes, trying to get your foot in the door?
I was putting out resumes. I was applying to different jobs. I didn't even know where to look. I was like, it
Mhm.
was just, I was on LinkedIn, but
Okay.
I felt completely lost. I just knew that I needed to move on to something better. In fact, a friend brought it up to me and she was like, why don't you try private jets? I'm like, pardon me? It's not
Yeah.
private jets. I see them in the movies. I see like that's a
Right.
thing. It's a thing. And she's like, yeah, it's a thing. And I'm like, okay. So then I started putting resumes out, and like it was just crickets, like absolute silence. And so I was like, well, I'm missing something. And it was disheartening. And
Mhm.
so there's that commonality that I know, like in trying to apply for commercial, there's that disheartening of like, I went through it for 2.5 years trying to get hired. It's like that, all that disappointment, but not realizing that in private, it's part of it. Like there's so many places you can apply, like literally so many places you can apply, that's just part of the game. if you just keep applying to different places, you just keep going to the next one and the next one. Like, it's not uncommon. Like, the people that I'm mentoring, I tell them, I said, you need to be putting out like 100 resumes every month at
Oh,
least.
wow.
Like, you,
Okay.
yeah, like you need to be like constant. And if you don't know where to go, there's websites they teach you where to go to, different platforms on LinkedIn, or different people to follow. But anyway, yeah, I
Are
got a little bit off track there.
those places to apply, are those part of your training course? Is that
I
part of
teach
your
them
course?
that. Yes.
Okay, so they
I
are.
teach
Okay,
them.
good. Good. So that's part of what you do, is even provide that connection to, because I
Yes.
can imagine, I mean, I'm a little bit of a scaredy cat, and I also have a daughter, so that makes a extra scaredy cat. Like, I don't want to just be like sending out my photo and resume into the
Hmm.
interwebs. I can imagine that you have to make sure, I mean, you want to make sure that you're being careful. I mean, we
Sure.
see scams like that on the commercial side a ton, but it's like a ton, but it's usually more like steal my identity, not like steal my whole self, kind of thing.
I have had that sometimes. I've had some weird people approach me, and they're wanting my passport right up front, or their driver's
Okay.
license right up front.
Yeah.
And when you're hungry and you're ready and you need
Yes.
jobs, so you need work,
Right.
you have to take an extra second to process that. And that's also a good point in the photo aspect, that not everybody asks for it. That's a really European based
Okay.
thing.
Even for
E-
private.
Even for private, yeah, like it's, I think there's some kind of law about not asking for it in the US. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what that is, but you can provide it though. I mean, because it's just kind of it's not a black and white thing in
Uh-huh.
private for the US to have a picture or not. I think it's helpful because you're in their house, you're in
Right.
their home. It's
Yes.
different from, like, you're coming in their home and serving them. So, they want somebody that they vibe with. There's a connection there of some
Yeah.
sort.
Yeah.
So it's just, you
Okay.
just have to kind of feel it out to see whether it's for you or not, and adding a picture or not.
Okay, good. And so I imagine too, like working with Natalie, if you're interested in pursuing this, if you do get one of those kind of weird
Oh
things,
yeah.
I
Hmm.
see them in my Facebook group. They, I screenshot where like American Airlines is spelled wrong, or, and we're like, or Delta Airlines is the easiest one because airlines is supposed to be 2 words. And if you
Hmm.
got an email from Delta, they are not messing that up, and if you get an
Right.
email
Yeah.
that says Delta Airlines, only 2 words and the airlines is together, we know, little clues like that. But if even on the outside of commercial, if you didn't know that, some of these things are so slick, it's hard to tell. So that's another benefit I know about working with someone, depending on which side you are. And that's one of the things that Natalie is in the industry, and she has other people that she knows too, and she could say,
Yes.
does this look legit? And they're like, no, that one's been going around. And we could say, okay, let's report this to LinkedIn and let's move on, kind of thing.
Yes.
So that's another huge benefit to keep you safe and to help you reach success first. So I love that. Okay, good, good. So what are some things, so you've been flying private for now. So what are your 3 favorite things about flying private or being a private? Here, let's talk first. So is it private? Is it corporate? Like, what's the word that we're supposed
You
to
can
use?
use any of them. It really is interchangeable.
Interchangeable.
It is
Okay.
interchangeable. A lot of
Okay.
times the word corporate gets confusing for people that aren't familiar with it. So I just use the word private just to
Okay.
make it, but you can use corporate, business, private, in any of that. It's
Okay, and any
interchangeable.
of those are just differentiating you away from commercial, which if
Yes.
you don't know what commercial is working for an airline that has scheduled service. So the FAA has different ways that they file different airlines, and
Yes.
the different filings, the different numbers, they're called like part 121, part 91. All of
Yep.
these different parts make the airline fall under different FAA regulations, or
Yes.
FARs. And so if you own your own jet, like if I owned my own jet and it only seated 7 to 9 people, I would have different safety regulations than if I owned Delta Airlines, which is flying the public transportation, much bigger planes. So these smaller airplanes actually don't usually even require a flight attendant in the same way
Correct.
we think about flight attendants being required in commercial. So
Yes.
even though most private flight attendants are safety trained, they
Hmm.
also have a very, very big service
Yes.
responsibility, because they are that almost in some ways is their primary function, with
Hmm.
having safety as a support system in case something were to go bad. Is that fair to say it kind of like
It
that?
is very, yes, it
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
It is.
So,
That was a big surprise for me when I first found that out. I'm like, what do you mean we're not required? We're there for your safety. I'm like, well, in
yeah,
private, not necessarily. The pilots are the primary safety person. I
right.
mean, yeah, it
Yeah.
was a different mindset for me. I'm
Yeah.
still a believer that we're needed for, like, when you've got 14 people on
Oh,
board,
absolutely.
there's no way the pilots can take care of the cockpit and get in the aircraft in a, it's just, you need that third person. So
Right. And if
yeah.
you've ever seen any kind of emergency landing happen or be involved in it in any kind of way, even I've been in a couple, none like catastrophic, but the checklist that the pilots have to run through when
Yes.
they have declared an emergency or they have hot brakes or they have too much fuel or whatever is so insane. It would take a substantial amount of time before they could even get to the back to get an evacuation going or to get windows and doors open and things like that. So,
I have a
much
story about that.
oh, do you?
I
I
do
wanna
have a
hear it.
story. You want to,
Okay,
I was like, we're getting
yes.
off track just a little bit, but
No,
was,
this is a good point, so
I was actually flying a politician and his assistant, his two assistants, and we had an emergency of some sort. I can't really explain it, but it was something to the effect of the aircraft. We got really heavy and we had to divert to a different airport in Washington. And when they found out that's what was happening, they started trying to come up to the cockpit to talk to the pilots about it. And the pilots were so focused on landing the aircraft safely that if they had actually, and I was standing right there in the middle, like there's no cockpit door.
right.
So I'm standing there in between trying to watch and just observe what's happening and watching them at this, like standing sideways. So that way I can kind of see what's happening on both sides. And the pilots later told me that if I had not been standing there, keeping them from coming into the cockpit to see what's going on, it would have ended completely different. Like when we landed, there was all of the emergency people meeting
Wow.
us because they weren't sure what was going to happen when we did land. So just from that, that was a turning
Yeah.
point for me of realizing how important we really are, even if there's
Yep.
two or three people on board.
Yeah. And, even in taking that as a source of pride, honor, and responsibility, even if they didn't know that. I mean, and even on the
Mhm.
commercial side, there's so much like sky waitress kind of thing until somebody has a heart attack. And that's the same thing too. Your pilots are not
Mhm.
going to come out of the flight deck and start, working together to perform chest compressions and breathing and leave no one flying the plane. Like that's just
Right.
not that's just not a reality. So
Mhm.
definitely, okay, good. Well, thank you for sharing that because I think that
Sure.
it is good because even though we're saying, both Natalie and I have flight attendant hearts and are passionate about this career. So we know that like hands down, number one, bottom line, we are no
For
matter
sure.
where we are in life, we are there for safety, for the safety of those
Mhm.
around us. It's something we can't separate from who we are. But in the marketing of yourself, commercially versus corporately, you are going to lean heavier into the service
For sure.
aspect, the service background.
Mhm.
If you are passionate about culinary things, if you are passionate about making sure, whether you're a flight attendant or not, if you switch your tablescape out and your mantle every season and you've got a box organized with a label, this is the opposite of me, FYI, box labeled with Easter and fall and Christmas and winter, and you like do the thing. I mean, I think of it sort of like we've all seen like Below Deck maybe, and they're doing these
Mhm.
tablescapes and these themes based on what's going on for the day or the needs of the customers. If that's your kind of thing, then private commercial, not private corporate aviation will give you the freedom to do that, to really
It's true.
like awe and delight with your hospitality skills and your hostess skills. Whereas even when you're working first class commercial, you do your best, you've got your linen and your disposable hot towels,
Yeah.
but that's it. You can make it a really nice first class service, but you're not personalizing it, like you said, to the level that you can in private.
Yes.
So what
Yes.
are so what are some things that you love about private?
First of all, um, that you were just speaking on what I was getting really frustrated with on the
Yeah.
commercial side was I felt like like these people, I knew these people were paying thousands of dollars to be in business class to fly over the pond, but yet I just felt like I wasn't trained enough to really give them what they deserved.
Mhm.
So that was part of my frustration. So thank you for bringing that up. One of the, we get paid well in private. Talking about
Okay.
pros for the private,
Fair.
we get paid really well.
Good.
It is done by the day and not by the hour. So if
Okay.
your day is a 45-minute flight from Reno to Vegas and that's your day, you get paid the same as if you were doing Vegas to Teterboro down to Opelika, Florida. Like it's this, you get paid the same. So it ends up evening itself out over time. And it's not something to really get hung up on,
Mhm.
but it's something to consider if that's something that's really important to you. Like if I get paid, if I'm to get paid by the hour, it just doesn't work that way. To give us examples of day rates, it ranges at the moment, and it's gone up significantly since COVID, really since last year, it started
Wow.
to go up. The day rate now ranges anywhere from $700 to $1,000 a day.
Wow.
There is a per diem and it's a flat day rate, and that ranges all over the board of some pay 60, 62, others pay 150. It just depends. So then it can kind of become a little bit of playing with them of like what is important to you. Do you want a non-tax amount of the per diem, or do you just want a certain amount that you for sure get every day? But money's a big thing that I enjoy about private. And it's also different clientele.
Hmm.
Um, the in commercial, it's the people in private are more respectful, in my opinion.
Okay.
Not always, but
Yeah.
most of the time. It's they're humans. It depends, but
Right.
most of the time, it's just a different mindset of people that if let's say they come from old money, then
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like
Yeah.
then they're respectful to
Yeah.
you. They treat you as a human. I've had people that fly by themselves and ask me to sit down with them, and I've done that. Like we'll sit for 2.5 hours just chatting away about stuff. Um, that's what I've got. And the creativity. That was the other thing I had
Creativity.
was
Yeah.
yes, because I found that I was able to do what I would like to do as far as like the welcome tables. When we have welcome tables when they board, as far as if I want to go really extravagant or if I want to do simple, or if I know that we're going to Hawaii and it's their honeymoon, then I can do something that's more Hawaiian themed and make them like get that wow factor as soon as they come on board. Or if it's little girl's first time to Disney World, doing Mickey Mouse and all the Disney things on the balloons in the staircase, and there's various things that you can do, and just having that freedom and that liberty to do that makes it really fun and exciting for me.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's really cool. And, so you get to do a welcome. You get to set everything up for a welcome as opposed to in commercial pre-departure drinks, beverages are usually water, orange juice, or mimosa.
Mm-hmm.
Like yes, like that is so special too.
It
It's
is.
special to be greeted with a mimosa no matter where you are in life. But,
Mm-hmm.
100%. But being able to really, really personalize it like that and be so thoughtful, I can imagine that's really rewarding to be able to
It
have
is.
the ability to do.
Yeah, I mean, because I could spend a day or two thinking about it and getting all the supplies together, and knowing what's ahead, especially since that was my first flight, knowing that's what I wanted to do forever was when I was 4 on an airplane
Right.
going to Disney World. So if I had excuse me, goosebumps thinking about it, but like if there's another little girl that's in that same
Yeah.
situation, knowing that she will never forget that, like that's something that will imprint on her. That's very special to me. And
Yeah.
that actually brings up another point that kind of deviates a little bit, but credit is it's actually really good to have in this, because as a contractor, a lot of times that money comes out of your pocket first. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so it's not always the case. Sometimes if you're with a company and you have been for a while, you can meet up with the pilots and use their card, so that way they can expense it first, and then you don't have to worry about it. It just varies. But that's I actually don't have the best credit. I have just so, and so my credit cards are real minimal.
Uh-huh.
But that's something I'm working on, just so I can have more liberty to be able to do. stuff like that.
Okay, so you're saying, so like for the welcome and all of the things that you're getting. So I don't know, some of us have seen pictures on airplanes, private jets. If you haven't, usually it's like a little like parfaits and drinks, or like a charcuterie board with like a
Yep.
sign. So are you
Yep.
saying like you go to Publix, you get all the little things and you put it on your credit card. So you probably have one you use for work.
I do.
So you put it on your credit card, and then part of your kind of end of trip
The
duty
work.
is
Yes.
filling out an expense report, and then you're reimbursed for that. So then you take that money and you pay that credit card off within the month
Yes.
and everything. But okay. And that's pretty standard as to how it works, because that would freak me out the first time I was asked if I didn't know that, right?
Yes.
So, okay, so that's really, do you usually have a budget that they give you to try to stick within, or a
It's good
reasonable?
to ask. It's for
Yeah,
it's
okay.
if it's a brand new company that you're working for, it's ask them that if there's a budget that you can use. Or I just, me personally, I stick under $200. Like you can get some pretty extravagant stuff for something like that.
Yeah.
But once you get to know the company more that you're working for, you can get a feel, because that's also you can get a feel of what to spend, because that's the other flip side to contracting, in that if it's a new company and you don't get that approval ahead of time, there's that chance of them not reimbursing you. So it's just something you really want to make sure you get your information ahead of time of, like, is it okay to spend it on this, and so on.
Okay. So if you like spent $1,000 and they had budgeted 250 or something,
Yeah.
then you're not going to get your full money back.
It's possibly
It's
not,
possible.
but yeah, it's
Or
just
they
not a good
could
idea.
just, yeah, or they could just pay it and say you went overboard next time, reining in or
Yeah, or they won't
something.
call you back.
They
They
won't
won't
give
call
you.
you back for another trip.
Okay, that's true. That's fair too. I mean, and that makes sense. So it sounds like communication, on the commercial side, you get your menu, you get your little photo of how the chef that they hired 15 years ago told you to plate the stuff. And then everything is in your service guide. Every 30 minutes, walk through the
True.
cabin with water. We do our pre-departures, then within an hour, do your meal service, then you do your, like everything is just on a checklist. So it
Yeah.
sounds like that you really do have the ability, though, to do it to do it the way you want to do it based on the situation.
That's a
Uh,
great point. Thank you for bringing
which
that
is
up.
which is
Is that
really cool.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, we're just
Is
chatting. We're not interrupting. I have ADHD. I talk over everybody. I don't even notice it. Go ahead. Sorry.
um there's something that we're taught in private, it's called silent butler training.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so you go through the cabin, like you set a timer for yourself, or you just kind of keep away, be consciously aware of how often you're going through. But when you go through, you're not going and asking, are you done with this, or how was that, or whatever. You're using your eyeballs. You're looking, if their glass is half empty, you just go get one and bring it to them. Or if they're not touching their food and they're not talking, take a glance of like, okay, we need to fix this situation, because if they're talking, that may be why they're not eating. So it's really reading the entire situation without talking, or talking very minimally, because you want to be there as a presence, not
Right.
as a spectacle.
Yeah, so it was explained to me by one of our other friends. It was kind of almost like you become part of the furniture, which I know can
Yeah,
sound
it sounds like
disrespectful
a William
depending on
thing.
how you're looking at it. But what that means is like you're just part of what is making the environment pleasant, as opposed to
Yes.
being the star, which is another reason why I would not do great in this, because I want to be the star. But on commercial, when you're walking down the aisle every 30 minutes to do your waters, or every hour on a red eye or whatever, like you want people to see you, because otherwise they're going to complain. The flight attendant never came out. They're going to write a letter
It's
to the
true.
company. The flight attendant
Yep.
never came out. So that's part of the reason why on commercial you do see, and you've done this before, so
I
that's
do.
part of it, is smiling at people. Are you okay? Can I get you anything? Knowing they're going to say no, but if you're not out there, then making sure that they see you, then they're going
That's
to
a
say
great
they
point.
never saw you. Whereas it sounds like for private it's a flip. If they
Yeah,
see
it
you,
is.
that could be a cause for complaint.
It just
The
depends. Yeah, it just depends.
hey.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
depends, especially if they're having a Zoom meeting, or if they're having a phone call,
right.
or if they're in a deep conversation. Yeah, like there's been times that I've shown up to be there to fix something or do whatever they needed, and they never made eye contact with me, and so I walked away. So you have to stand there, and it's very uncomfortable if you're not used to it, but
Right.
I have to consciously just stand there and maybe count to one, two, or three and realize they're not looking my way, and then walk away or go to the
Yeah.
next thing, the next section of the cabin or whatever. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's fair. Okay, good, good. I love that. So what I know that private is your home. That's where you have found your career for now,
Mhm.
but since the part of the goal of this video is to really kind of contrast the two options,
Yes.
what do
Mhm.
you miss about commercial? So there's got to be a couple things maybe you miss a little bit.
Sure. Sure. The flight benefits are one thing. Like that would be pleasant to have. My family doesn't live here in Florida. They live in Arkansas. So that would be pleasant to have. Um, the flip side to that is that we make good money. So if
Right.
I work enough days, I can pay for a ticket. And that's what I do. But there's that. I did come from Delta, so there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Like that's a legacy carrier. Like that's
Yeah.
in my opinion, that's still one of, even being out of it, it's still one of the best carriers there are. So
Right.
having that, um,
It's like iconic to be a
yeah,
Delta flight
yeah,
attendant.
yeah. Um, what are some other things? Okay, so being more data based, knowing schedules ahead of time. Like the
Oh,
bids came out on whatever date it was, 17th or whatever, and then I knew what my schedule would be. Or if I didn't like it, I could trade it around with people. And like if I wanted to go to Paris instead of London or whatever, there was
right.
more flexibility in that aspect of it. And then in private, it's people in private don't plan trips ahead of time. They like
Mhm.
if they do, they're a different breed. There's it's not as common. Normally it's very last minute. So I get called on a trip that like, can you go to the airport now or can you go tomorrow? So that's been my life since I've started is very last minute. So that was an adjustment. It'd be nice to have a schedule. Now, after being in it a while, I am really just now, everybody's different, every journey is different, but I am just now getting to a point where I can have a somewhat planned ahead schedule because
Okay.
I have two companies that I work for on a regular basis that they
Ah,
plan it out. But it takes a long time to get there. Like
yeah.
and maybe somebody else they may have it within 3 weeks. I don't know, but it's just different. But knowing schedules ahead of time was it.
Yeah.
And then the teamwork aspect, like we work by ourselves, unless you're on a Boeing business jet, which
Mhm.
is 7.3 or 7.5 turned into a business um, formation. Um, I work by myself. So if something is not, if we're missing something or I'm in the weeds or I can't keep up, it's me. That's it. Like
Yeah.
sometimes if it's really bad, one of the pilots will come back and help me get back on my feet again. But I don't think I've ever really had that happen. But they could if I wanted them to. But
Right.
having a backup that would be something that. But then at the same time, I kind of like working by myself too.
Yeah.
So it's a flip.
Yeah. And
Just
I can
depends.
imagine on overnights too.
Yes, that's a good
if
point.
you're with a crew, there's always someone to go to Applebee's with. So that's,
That's true too.
usually, not always, but usually.
Right.
So, okay. I mean, I
Or
think
red
that's,
eyes, like you said, the overnights, being able to like help keep you awake. That's
yes.
what
Yeah.
I thought you were going with that. Yeah, be able to talk to, I mean, like I said, there's no door to the cockpit. So we really are the three of us a team. Like we
Okay.
do think make sure everything gets done together. But I mean, we'll visit on the red eyes, but yeah, just to have some other teamwork on the red eyes, that's a big one too.
Yeah, have someone to chat with. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
That makes sense. So good. Good. All right. So what are some qualities? So let's talk a little bit about I want to talk a little bit about your course, what
Sure.
it like what problems it solves, right? Basically, like what people may be struggling with. So what's the biggest misconception that you find when you first talk to clients or people who are thinking about being private? What's the biggest
I
misconception?
would say, I would say the biggest one is that people don't realize that there are literally thousands of jobs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, like there's tons and tons of jobs to be had, and then it's hard to get in. It is work, but when you
Okay.
know the steps, it's not it's not that hard. It's literally a rinse and repeat type process of trying to get in.
Okay.
So where I found myself when I was trying to get in was completely lost of like, what's the first step? Like, what do I do?
Yes.
Like, I know I love to fly, but what do I do? So what I have done is laid it out in a very simple step by step. This is what you do. And if you don't have a job yet, you go back to the beginning and you keep doing it. You
Oh,
keep
good.
just rinse and repeat. And because I found like there's not information out there that makes it very simple laid out of like this is
Uh-huh.
what you do to get in. So I found myself very frustrated of not having the right information. And I think because it's private, you have to be, some people are scared or fearful of not of giving the wrong information or information that's too much because it's
Yeah.
considered private. But the
Yeah.
information I give is just basic knowledge of this is what you need to do. You need a basic, the bottom line is you need to put yourself in front of people for them to find you. It's not an assessment of making sure that get through certain parts so you can get to the face to face. It's meeting people. Like I cannot tell you how many jobs I've gotten based upon somebody referring me.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So, good. So, two misconceptions. One is that there's a limited amount of work out there for private flight
Mhm,
attendants. And then the
mhm.
other one is that it's really, really hard to get into it,
It's just
So,
work. It's not
yeah.
hard. It's just work.
And we have those same misconceptions on the commercial side. I mean, which like people think that
Mhm.
there's only three airlines that exist: Delta, American,
Yes.
United, and
Mhm.
then they think that it's really, really hard, and it's really not really, really hard to get in. So good, I love that. And so you said that's one of the things that your course lays out. So it teaches
Very
you
simply.
what you need,
Mhm.
what should be in your resume,
Yes.
where to send your resume. And
Mhm.
then is there an interview process as well?
Sometimes, but I have found the interview process with private is very, very chat, very like
Oh,
conversation
okay.
like you and I are having. Like in the
Okay.
beginning, I thought that was like it was something I needed to be nervous about. So I was,
Right.
but then until I realized that they wanted to just know who I was as a human, like
Okay.
it was just everyday conversation after
Oh,
that.
right. Sorry. Trying to plug back
No,
into
it's all
you.
good. It's all good.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense. So because it is a little bit different. For one thing, when you commercial aviation, there's like the person interviewing you, he's taking notes, he's reporting back, there's this team, blah blah blah, like all these different
mhm,
things. Whereas like if I'm just hiring anyone to work in, like you said, in my house, which the private jet is part of, it's like, do I
mhm,
like them, do I vibe with them? And then it's also not the same as employment with a company, in the sense that once you get hired by an airline, they're going to pay $30,000 to train you, and then
mhm.
they want to get their investment back, and they want to make sure you're a good fit. Whereas for you, like it's like, oh yeah, I that's how I imagine it to be. Oh, you seem great. Come on, let's go. And then like, oh, that was fantastic. We'd love to have you again. Or maybe when the kids are here, she'd be great, but I don't know if she'd be good for this kind of thing. Or maybe she's not best for the business meetings or something like that. Not you personally. I just mean like
I hear you.
like there's
Mhm.
different seasons, different opportunities for a different kind of experience, and a different type of flight attendant, a different type of service.
Yes.
So anyone who has specialized skills, I imagine that can be really helpful too. So
It
I've worked on
is.
some resumes where it's been like raw chefs, raw food chefs or whatever,
Mhm.
like
Yeah, I
where
know.
they have a lot of culinary background. And I know Da Vinci Inflight Institute is one of the ones that does a lot of culinary training so if you're listening and you don't know how to do all these little fancy things, there's Natalie is got her course and her resources. And then there's
Mhm.
even ways that she can connect you to next
Yes.
level things if you're
Mhm.
really interested in that. But just even having a basic knowledge of like what is kosher, which if you've been through commercial training
Mhm. Mhm.
with a legacy carrier, I mean, I remember learning all about that, about the differences, about what is kosher and how to treat the kosher meal, even on commercial aviation, and that kind of thing also translates over vegan, vegetarian, like all these differences and things. Is there
Ramadan
resources?
is another one.
Yeah. Oh, right. Where you're
Mhm.
fasting during the day and what time. And so I imagine if you have someone who's observing Ramadan, you're not doing a full spread at noon with the
No.
smell wafting and
Yeah. You
right?
have everything. I actually just, the reason I said Ramadan was there was a flight attendant, one of our chat groups, that she explained, like she wrote a whole paragraph of what was done. And I didn't know. I like it was, and they
Yeah,
were asking like to have specifically have everything put away, ask the crew not to eat within sight, and to
right.
make sure there were no smells. And that as soon as the sunset, or
Yep.
whichever way it was,
Sundown.
no sundown, that they had dates and something else because
Right.
it helped their sugar, their blood sugar, like
Yeah.
all these specific things that you wouldn't
Yeah.
think about. But as the private flight attendant, you have to shop for it. You have to make sure that you have the
Oh,
things that you
correct.
need for stuff like that. In
Yeah.
the kosher aspect, I've not experienced it on the private side yet, but there's a whole process in making sure you've got kosher meals
Mhm.
to that fit for, yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's
So
like
you're
on
going to
leg.
find, yeah, a kosher kitchen in the town that you're in, and you're going to ask them
Yes.
to prepare it, and you're going to ask them to plate it because you can't even plate it, like all those things so that you're serving it. Yeah. And so it does sound like resources that you're offering resources in your course, and then also
Oh, for sure.
access to experts,
Hmm.
within your community too. So if anyone is listening and they do have that kind of specialized background, again, this is something that maybe would be something, or even if you were the one that planned all the amazing birthday parties, like it doesn't have to be like
Yeah.
formal training. Like if you're good
No.
at this, you're good at this kind of stuff. If you're good at details and making it look and feel special, then you're good at it. And Natalie can tell you how to, go from I planned all my kids' birthday parties, and how you can translate in that into something that is resume worthy,
Yes.
so
Yes.
that it
Yes. Mhm.
is, so how many guests did you host? How often did you do it? Who asked you to help them with theirs? Like all of those kinds of things, whether you were paid or not, experience is experience, skills are skills.
100%. Hmm.
Yeah. Good. I love that. I love that. What else would you like to share about your course? If you wouldn't mind just sort of like walking us through what else we can.
Sure. If anything, I'm helping get rid of that gap of confusion and time,
I love that.
because I spent so much time trying to figure things out the hard way, and I felt like people were not as open. Maybe it was just the era that I started in, because now I feel like there's a lot more people that are willing to help. But there are times when I like need an answer now. Like I just got called for a trip and I don't know what to do. I don't know what I need to pack. Do I need to go to Whole Foods, or do I just need to show up in my uniform? And just various
Right.
things. I help close that gap of confusion and having somebody on your side and creating a community that we all work together for us all to have success.
Yeah. Okay, good. I love that. And it's more because I know you said community. So there is a community aspect of
Mhm.
it, but this is also a course. So
Yes, but
so
mhm.
those of y'all who are familiar with Flight Attendant Career Connection, that's a community, but that's just sort of like a resource guide. Natalie offers that kind of experience as well as a course, though, to really get to the nitty gritty of what you need to do to find success and to find
Yes.
your success, to find your perfect place, because there's different ways, there's different opportunities even within private aviation. So there's
Oh,
people
yeah.
who own their own jet, and they would hire someone either to be on staff and work for their company and always staff the jet, or if they have a longer trip or a bunch of family, maybe they just hire a freelance flight attendant from time
Mhm.
to time. There's also broker companies that are sort of tasked with keeping up with the plane, making sure that its maintenance and fuel and all that kind of stuff is taken care of, as well as staffing flight attendants when requested by the person who owns the jet or owns even like a share of the jet, if I'm not
Mhm.
wrong. And then
Yes.
sometimes there's also a couple companies, Wheels
Charter
Up,
companies.
Net Jets, and these are companies that employ private commercial or private corporate flight attendants, and they provide some of the catering and the food. So there's a little bit less work on the front end, I imagine. But then
Yeah.
again, sometimes you're limited. But even though you're limited maybe on the menu, correct me if I'm wrong, you can still bring all of your flair and all of
Mhm.
you don't have to serve it exactly the same way every time. So you'd still
Correct.
provide that personalized service. So I think, that's why you're saying there's thousands of opportunities, because we're
There
not just
are.
talking
Let me
about.
just help put that in perspective of why I say there's that many. So there are the charter companies where they do a lot of the catering, and then you serve it. And a lot of catering companies do not provide great catering. Like you
Right.
end up having to make it beautiful when it wasn't
Yes.
beautiful in the first place. So there are those, and then there's also the private owners, which I want you to think about, like Hollywood, how many actors there are. Think about sports teams, how many
Right.
people own their own little aviation company. Um, think of things like Walmart or Shell Oil or whatever business is in your state. Just think of as an example. Think they've got their own jet or they've got their own aviation company. Like there is just literally, that's what blew me away, was thinking that it was just these, because my mind was small and thinking that it was
Yeah.
hard to get in.
Yeah.
It's not, it was wrong information, and that it's actually a whole lot more. And also think that there's the basic or the main airports, like there's Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Honolulu or whatever, but people that can afford to fly private don't want to drive. So they
Right.
put airports, smaller airports in between. So just because there's, where I'm in Southeast Florida, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami, there's also Boca Raton that there's no commercial out of, but it's in the middle. And then there's also one in Lantana. And then there's all these little ones so that people don't have to
Right.
drive. The plane is coming to the person and
Yes.
not the other way around.
Yeah. During the pandemic, my husband had the when he was on leave, he had the opportunity to work at an airport, a private airport that was inside a country club in Key Largo.
Okay.
So Key Largo, it was called Ocean Reef, or it's one of the most exclusive. And so
Okay.
that's like, I hadn't heard of it before, right? But we were living in Key Largo and we saw the job. And so he went and worked the ramp there. And that was kind of our first even exposure to this world. And you're right, people with a lot of money, especially old money, discretion is a big deal. So they're not flashy. That's why we don't think they exist. It's just
Yes.
because they're not talking about it. But
Very
the
good.
amount of money that exists, I mean, I think even, I mean, you're from Arkansas, I'm from South Carolina. Even the first time you saw how much a Delta first class or a United first class
Yeah.
ticket, $10,000, you're like, people have that money,
Yes.
and there's hundreds of them every day, hundreds
Yes.
and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that are filling up first class. And then that's just like the regular level of having money. And then there's the wealthy, and so there, one time he worked a flight, on the ground, and they had chartered a jet to go. It was just a girls' day trip to Miami, which is an hour drive from Key Largo, but they didn't even leave the private, community. They're in their country club, and they just go to the airport, get on their plane, fly up to Tamiami, which is one of the private little airports. They shopped all day, and then they got back on their private jet, so they didn't have to drive the hour home. It's like that kind of
that's a classic example. Very good. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it like blows my mind. But if you got it like that, you got it like that. So like, that's why there's opportunities for this kind of thing. Yeah. So that
thank you for giving that. That's very visual.
Yeah, and a lot of people own their own planes. Sometimes they're even pilots. Like but if they've got their family on this trip, they've got their daughter and their son-in-law and their 3 kids, they want a flight attendant back there to help mix the bottles and help plate the toddler food and all of that kind of stuff too. So they maybe don't even hire pilots, and now they have hired a flight attendant. Like there's all different kinds of situations like this. So that's why I'm really excited about this. One more thing I want to mention is there's also flight attendants who are still commercial flight attendants and freelance private on the side. And that allows you to stay attached to your flight benefits, your health insurance. Now, every airline has a different stipulation as to your minimums that you have to fly. Southwest has 0 minimum requirements, so you could drop all your trips and only fly private. And then some other airlines, I know one flight attendant who flies private for a company and also works for American, and I think she does 2 trips a month so that she can stay, attached to her benefits and things like that.
Sure.
So that's another thing too. If you are a commercial flight attendant right now and you're thinking about this, we're not saying jump ship or, quit. This is a fantastic opportunity. Natalie has done that same course as you. And so connect with her, invest in her resources, because the fact that you have such a safety foundation is really, really valuable. And then she can show you how to turn that into an opportunity to maybe even just, yeah, from time to time, I'm going to work as a private flight attendant, or, maybe I'm just on a list and they call me once a month to work a private trip. I get a bigger check, but I'm still, I still love what I do on this other side. So that's one thing that when I found that out, I was like, that's really cool, because you really can mix and match it however you want. The only real stipulation when you work for one airline is that you cannot be employed by another airline. So when you are a private freelance flight attendant, you are not employed by another airline. So you couldn't, be a flight attendant for Southwest and American at the same time. They wouldn't.
Right.
That, but they do allow, and there's also pilots who do the same thing. Commercial pilots who fly private freelance on the side. We also see a lot when they retire, a lot of commercial pilots when they retire at mandatory at 65. Thankfully, we can have that stipulation. We can keep flying as long as we want. They'll move into the private sector too. So it's not like you're just flying with like all these like Mavericks or whatever that couldn't get a job with Delta or whatever, it's they're, I want to be like real pilots, but it's like a whole professional community, and it is attached in a lot of ways to the commercial. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of people who started here, started there, kind of move back and forth. So it's not, I think that's kind of important to know, because I think we feel like commercial is accessible, but these same people that are working in private probably had a similar place in
that's what makes it accessible.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's good. Yep. So how can we find you? How can we access your course?
Yoursinflight.com is where my course is.
Okay.
And I'm also on Instagram if you want to DM me there, Yours in Flight.
Okay.
And then I also have a Facebook page, Yours in Flight. So if you want to DM me there.
So YOURS Inflight, no hyphen, INFLIGHT, inflight.com.
That's it. And you can see it. I think it's in my, I don't know if it shows up in this, it's in my name on the
oh, I see. It does show up. Oh, smart. Okay. And then you have a coupon code for us?
I do. It is flight.
Okay. Yes. So coupon code flight will save 10%. You money on the course. Yep. So really, really excited to have met with you. Like we said, I'm going to put all those links and coupon codes and stuff in the description. Also, leave in the comments any questions that you have.
Please do. Yes.
Get together. So let's get together again, Natalie, and do like a
Let's do it.
Because I'm sure this opened a whole can of worms. So
I'm sure it did. And I feel like there's other things that we can talk about too, because I want to make it clear that this isn't one industry over another. Like commercial's the way to go, or private's the way to go. Each of us are completely different humans that have something to offer to the universe that's you that nobody else can.
100%.
So like, I don't want to go back to commercial. That's not where I belong. And then Abby says she doesn't want to go to private. Like that's a perfect example of how we're different people that have something different to offer. So it's a matter of you deciding what your journey is, where to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're here to support you whichever way it is.
And there's room for you. And if that's your heart is pulling you one way or the other, follow that. You have what it takes. You have enough. Natalie and I are both just girls from the South that now like have seen the world. Pretty cool.
Because it is.
That's pretty cool. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see, I can't wait to see maybe some, I know it'd probably be sort of like on the down low because we have to be a little discreet, but I can't wait to see who watches this video and where they end up on their first, second, third trip.
I'm cheering you on the whole time.
I can't wait to look on LinkedIn and see the picture of the charcuterie boards and
absolutely
all the things, so beautiful. I'm really excited. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abby. I appreciate you.